fear, anxiety. You may worry. You may gossip. You may talk about people behind their backs. All these things are things that we deal with on this earth. But what if I told you that there is a way you don't have to deal with it anymore? What if I told you that there was a way that you can have peace in this world, that you can have God? Paul in Philippians chapter 4, if you'd like to turn there, tells us exactly how to obtain the peace of God. Starting in verse 6, he says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." We as Christians need to talk to our Father. But I ask you, how many times do you actually speak to Him? How many times do you go to your Father in your prayer and you say, "Father, I'm dealing with something. I need help"? I fear that we as Christians look to God during our worst times only. Yes, we turn to God during our worst times, but we should also turn to Him during our best times. Thankfulness and worry go hand in hand. There's this idea that God will only answer your prayer if it benefits you. It's simply not true. If you thank God for what you have, He answers. But I also ask you, how many times do you go to God and you say, "Father, I want something"? Do you go to Him more times with a want than a need? Do you go to Him more times with a want than thankfulness? If you truly want peace, God will be a constant in your life. And as we continue reading in Philippians chapter 4, Paul continues and he says, "And the peace of God which passeth all understanding shall keep your hearts and your minds through Jesus Christ." We might not fully understand this peace that God gives us, but that still doesn't mean that we can't fully rely on it. I'll admit, I don't understand how a car fully works. I don't understand every basic function. I don't understand every gear. But I know that it can get me places. I don't fully understand how my body works. I don't understand how I can think my hand move, but not think move hand and it moves. It's confusing, but it works, and I rely on it, and I don't fully understand it. God works the same way. We don't need to fully understand God to fully trust in God. And that's the beauty of it. He doesn't wait for you to be perfect. He takes you as you are. We get this idea that God doesn't want me because I'm not good enough. We get this idea that God doesn't want me because I've done too much. We're reading a letter from a man who murdered Christians. Not only did he murder Christians, but he persecuted them actively. He went out and he searched for them. He got warrants and he searched for them. He went into the synagogues, to the churches, and he dragged them out and he killed them. And yet, Christ chose him. Now think on that for a moment. A murderer. A man who was persecuting the very people that he later would join. And I ask you, have you ever killed a Christian? I ask you, have you ever killed anybody? I would assume the answer is no. Take that as you will. But John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on Him should not perish, but have everlasting life." It doesn't say, "For God so loved the perfect people." It doesn't say, "For God so loved the people that obey His will perfectly." It doesn't say that God so loved those that have never killed anybody. It specifically says the world. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm part of the world. I live in the world. I know. I've been here my whole life. And I assume many of you have as well. But it's the idea that God doesn't wait for you to be perfect. God doesn't wait for you to change your ways. He wants you as you are, and yes, you will change if you truly love Him, but that's not to say that you have to be perfect to come and accept His perfectness. So we've seen that we must pray, and we've seen that we need to fully rely on God's peace, but how do we obtain this peace? Well, Paul continues in verse verse 8, and he says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good, of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." It's often said that your mind is like a machine, that your body is like a machine. What you put in also comes out. If you put in good things will come out. If you put in bad things will come out. If you want the peace of God, dwell on the good things. So often we're in the world, we're in school, we're at our jobs, but at the same time, do we act like the world that we're living in? We read a verse earlier in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. It says we are to be separate. Unlike the world, we're supposed to stick out. But I ask you, how many times do you go to a place and you blend in? How good is your disguise in the world? Is it good enough that people can't tell you're a Christian? Is it good enough that people don't know who your father is? Then I ask you, can you truly call yourself a child of God? You call yourself a Christian, you call yourself a child of God, but people don't know who your father is? Continuing in verse 9, it says, "Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you." Your faith means nothing if you don't put it into action. Your faith doesn't mean anything if you let it go to waste. I would ask you to imagine something with me. Imagine you make it to the gates of heaven, and in front of you is the Apostle Paul, the very person whose letter we're reading from, and he turns to you and he says, "Oh, you're a Christian, right?" And you say, "Oh, yes, Paul, I'm a Christian." And then he says, "What have you done for the kingdom?" And you say, "Well, I go to church on Sundays, Paul. I go to Wednesday nights too. That's 2 services." And he says, "That's good, but what have you done for the kingdom?" And then you say, "Well, I go to second service on Sundays, Paul. That's 3 services. That's about 3 hours out of my life. That's pretty good." And he turns to you and he says, that's good, but what have you done for the kingdom?" And in silence, you think to yourself, have I done anything for the kingdom? Has there been any work? Has there been any effort put into my faith? Has there been any building of my spiritual walls? Has there been any support put on other people's walls? Faith put into action. If you have a sword and you let it rust, if you have a sword and you don't use it and you don't sharpen it and you don't keep it pristine, the day that you try to use it, what's going to happen? It's going to break. And the day that your shield is put in your right arm and your sword is in your left and you march forwards and you don't know how to use it because you don't practice with it, because you don't build the faith that you have, how good are you going to be in the army? When it comes time for you to put your faith to the test, what score are you going to get? I pray that it would be a passing score, and I'll leave you with this. We get the idea that all we have to do is show up. But there's more to faith than just showing up. It's about actively working on it. When we put the armor on you, when we put you out on the front lines, what work will you do for Christ?